So rule one for me is I'll never own a stock that doesn't pay a dividend, ever.
Dividend investing is one of the ways where we can create multiple streams of income.
Dividends are by far the easiest way to begin replacing your income.
Diversified ways of investing.
Well, the answer is I do believe in dividends.
And passive cash flow. And in this video, I'm going to be getting into whether or not dividend investing is the right thing for you, how much you would need in order for dividend investing to replace your lifestyle and your current income, and whether or not it's the right thing for you. But before I do, please make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can come back for more videos. We're going to get started right now. How do dividends work? Dividends are a form of profit sharing. Basically, at the end of a quarter or at the end of the year, companies who have extra money have one of two choices of what to do with it. Either one, they can reinvest it back into the business to try to achieve higher levels of growth in the future, or they can issue a dividend to shareholders. And what this does is it keeps shareholders interested in holding on to that specific investment over a period of time because they're getting a cash payment to do so. So when you see a different type of fund or ETF that invests in various companies that pay dividends, what they're hoping for is that all these companies will continuously issue dividends over time, and then they can pass all of those dividends along to investors like you and me. What are some of the benefits of dividend investing? Well, the first and most obvious one is the fact that you will likely receive a passive stream of income.
One of the benefits with dividends is that it's completely passive.
A lot of people look and say they want multiple streams of income. Well, dividends is one of the simplest and easiest ways to do this. And of course, the barrier to entry for most dividend investment funds out there is quite low. $500, $1,000. Sometimes if you're putting money in regularly, it only costs like 50 bucks a month. So it's a really easy way to get started on that journey of creating additional and passive sources of income. Another big benefit when it comes to dividend style investing is that it offers a level of stability.
Sir, it's quite possible this asteroid is not entirely stable.
Typically, companies don't end up offering dividends unless they are in a stable place where they're not projected to see higher than average growth. And so in order to keep investors interested, they will issue a dividend. And so a lot of the time when people are investing in dividend-based investments, the level of stability in these companies is quite a bit better. So even in an economic recession or a market downturn or a different thing like that, a lot of the time you will still see those dividend payments come through, and the amount of fluctuations in the overall value of the investments doesn't go up and down quite as much. Another huge benefit to dividend investing is that it actually allows you to invest more without you having to put up any extra money. How? By something called a dividend reinvestment plan, or a DRIP. What happens is every time a company or your fund issues some type of dividend payout, you have the option to either take that as a cash payment, and of course that'll end up being taxed.
Every year you make hard-working Joes like my reporter friend here pay income taxes.
Or you can get that dividend reinvestment plan, that DRIP, to purchase more of the fund or more of the different companies. This dividend reinvestment plan allows you to buy more of the dividend paying investment without you ever having to put up any extra money yourself. So that is another major benefit of dividend investing. Some of the drawbacks when it comes to dividend paying investments are things like potentially slower growth. Typically, companies only issue dividends when they don't see a possibility of amplifying their growth through reinvesting that money. Another drawback, of course, with dividends is that if you take them in any account other than something like your tax-free saving account or RSP, there are tax consequences to receiving dividends. On the other hand, when it comes to things like capital gains, where you buy, let's say, a fund for $1,000, it becomes $2,000, you only will pay tax on that $2,000 when you sell that investment and reap the rewards. Whereas when you're receiving dividends constantly and consistently over time, even if you don't sell that initial investment, you will pay some tax on the dividends that you receive. And of course, another drawback to dividends is that they are certainly not guaranteed. Within any dividend fund, companies, once they decide maybe to reinvest that cash money, they may cut their dividend. If things are going poorly in the economy, companies may decide to cut their dividend as well. So dividends are not a guaranteed source of income. And although once companies start issuing dividends, typically they don't go away, The amount that you can receive in dividends, of course, may change depending on economic situations. So those are a few drawbacks to seeking dividends when it comes to investing. The average payout from a dividend fund is anywhere between 2 and 4%. So for the purposes of this calculation, we're going to use 3% as the dividend. So how much would you need in order to pay for your lifestyle as an average Canadian? Well, data shows that the average Canadian needs approximately $6,000 per month in order to meet all their expenses and live relatively comfortably. So that's about $72,000 a year. At a 3% dividend rate, you would need approximately $2.4 million in order to pay for all of your expenses. Now, don't let that discourage you. Just because that is a really high number that you're nowhere near right now doesn't mean you can't achieve it. And the best way to look at this is to start with baby steps. So how much would you need in order to pay for, let's say, your Netflix or Disney Plus subscription? Approximately $15 a month. So in order to do that just with dividends, you would need approximately $6,000. Let's take it a step further. How much would you need in order to pay for your internet or your phone? That's approximately $100 a month. So what you would need is approximately $40,000 in order to make that happen. How about your average utility bill? Your average utility bill is somewhere around $200 a month. So in order to pay for that, you would need $80,000 in order for your dividends to cover a utility bill. The average car payment for a Canadian is approximately $600 per month. So how much would you need in order to cover that? You need approximately $240,000. What about paying for your shelter? The average rent in Canada costs approximately $2,000 a month. And so in order for your dividends to pay your rent, you would need approximately $800,000 at a 3% dividend rate in order for dividends to cover that. This seems steep, and it seems like this may be out of reach for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's a great way to think about how you can pay for various things in a passive manner. Now, here's what you don't want to do. What you don't want to do is get to a point where you have enough so that the dividends will actually pay for one of these expenses, and then you actually start using those dividends to pay for one of these expenses, unless you absolutely need to. Why? Because you take away the power of compounding. If we start using the dividends to pay for various expenses before we need to, we're actually robbing ourselves of the ability for those investments to compound. So to give you an idea, let's say, for example, we have $6,000 in a dividend fund, and that makes us $15 a month, or about $100 or so per year. Instead of using that $15 a month dividend to actually pay for that Netflix subscription, what we should be doing, get those reinvested back into the fund, back into the ETF, so that we can get more units, and therefore the dividends that pay out the next time get reinvested again, and so on and so forth. This creates a compounding effect much more powerful than using the dividends specifically to pay for things with cash. And once you get to a level where everything can be taken care of with the dividends, that is when you start using it as cash. But don't use the dividends before you actually need to. That is the point. Let's say you've come to the decision that dividends are in fact right for you. How do you go about investing in something that pays a dividend? You do have a few options, but the ones that I would recommend would be to look at dividend mutual funds or dividend ETFs. You do, of course, have the option to buy individual shares of companies that pay a dividend, but that obviously requires a lot of time, a lot of research, and it's more difficult to diversify your risk across a bunch of different companies. Whereas if you were to buy into some type of dividend mutual fund or dividend ETF, you would get those dividends without having to go through all the process of doing the research, diversifying, finding the right company, and so on and so forth. So overall, I think for you, what you want to do is set up some type of account, tax-free saving account, RSP, RESP, something like that. Buy the dividend fund or ETF that you're looking at, and then go ahead and invest through those accounts. This is all well and good, but the question we need to know and we need to ask ourselves is whether or not dividends are even halal. A lot of the time people look at dividends and think, well, this is the exact same thing as interest, but that is not correct. Dividends are a form of profit sharing, as we mentioned before. And profit in Islam is acceptable. It is halal for you to receive dividends, as long as they are coming from a halal source. So you can't have dividends that are coming from banks or insurance companies. But if a dividend is coming, say, from a telecommunications company or an internet provider, that's probably okay. So ultimately, investing as a strategy to get dividends is not a bad thing, and it can be a halal way to increase your wealth and to grow your wealth. But overall, we need to make sure that what we're doing is being taken care of in a halal way, and it needs to make financial sense for us. I hope this video helps. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.